We're in Dervock, the village in North Antrim, and it's a village that has a history that goes back centuries, really. There's evidence of people that were living here maybe 8,000 or 9,000 years ago.
Dervock is a very, very old area. Dervock, as it was called, which was the young oak grove.
Dervock, basically, as I always seen it, was the gateway to the Causeway Coast. We're sitting right in close to Bushmills, Ballycastle, all the outlying areas around the village, the Causeway Coast and Glens area. We are the gateway to that area.
Dervock consists of between 800 and 1,000 population. You go down to the centre of the village, you've got the old market house built by the late George McCartney in 1803. Across the road, you've got the McCartney Fountain, which was built by the local tenants when one of the McCartneys passed away. The local bridge, or the bridge, is known locally. It's one of the oldest river crossings, which determines Dervock is one of the oldest dwellings in the North Coast area.
History is such an important part of Dervock's identity, and you can take any part of history and you'll find something important or something landmarked in Dervock that represents that. When you visit Dervock, it's worth just having a wander around and looking at the architecture, the buildings, and that's where you first see the history in the place. The old churches, the bridge itself, that has a lot of antiquity to it. The market house is a reflection of the old market house, but it gives you an idea of the thought and the vision that went into the buildings in this village.
The buildings actually tell a story about the structural heritage of the local community. Again, the old market house, you've got the war memorial, you've got the church, the four churches. They all tell their own story, and they record a certain period within our history. The centrepiece is the old market house, which in 1991-92, we acquired CRISP status, which meant that we secured core funding from AFI, which allowed the old building to be redeveloped into its current format, which consists of a hairdresser's, a small gym and a cafe.
I own the Pepper Mill Cafe in Dervock, which was originally the old co-op over 100 years ago. It got rejuvenated there about 15 years ago, and it's kept the same sort of aesthetic of the building. We've got the blue circle outside for Kennedy K. MacArthur, who was the first Olympic gold medalist from Ireland. We've got the fountain across the road, which was for Lord McCartney.
Earl McCartney would have been an important historical figure in British history as well as in local history. He would have been the landlord here. His home would have been Unearth, and he was an important figure in politics. He was one of the first to visit China. On his return from China, he would have come back to his home at Unearth, and he continued his political career. He died in 1806. He was in Parliament, and he actually passed away in London, but he would have been seen as a benevolent landlord for its time. We know from looking back at old maps from the early 1800s, you had the market house and you had these rows of cottages. And these would have been the tenants of Earl McCartney, and he would have built those cottages, and people would have been able to live there in relative comfort. Unlike other places in Ireland at that time, a benevolent landlord like McCartney, benevolent for his time, would have been important. It would have meant that people would have thought of Dervock as being a fortunate and a good place to live.
We're sitting in one of the oldest buildings within the community of Dervock. It's the Adair Hall. We've got the connections with Lord Nelson through Captain Allen, who was on the same flagship as Lord Nelson when he was killed.
The Adair Hall, it was completed in 1936. It was gifted to Dervock by Samuel Allen, and it's called the Adair Hall. It's in memory of the families, the Allen family of Lisconnin and the Adairs of Ballymena. And there's a spectacular stained glass window in the hall which depicts the Battle of Trafalgar.
I remember coming here as a youngster, and the windows always fascinated me. That image is Trafalgar Day, 21st October 1805. Adair was on board the ship, HMS Victory, and Nelson tells him to go up the rigging with his men and check the rigging. He's climbing the rigging and he gets shot and he drops at Nelson's feet. And Nelson says, "There goes young Adair. I fear he should be next." And within seconds he was dead. Nelson was dead. He created this hole as a shrine. And what he left us was a legacy. He maybe didn't realise it at the time. He maybe never thought there was somebody like me coming along later. But what he done was he left a legacy. He knew that he wasn't going to be here forever. So he left us this.
It's, I believe, one of the, if not the only, Trafalgar monument in Ireland, one of the few. And in fact, the Royal Navy were here several years ago as part of a short ceremony to pay honour to that on Trafalgar Day. But it's a very, very special window, and if you do get the opportunity, it's worth going into the hall and having a look at it. There's an interesting story about the church, St. Coleman's, because it was originally at Derry Keegan, not far from here. And at that time, it was decided that the parish church should be in Dervock village rather than outside the village. But the congregation split, and then in 1829, I think it was, there was an unfortunate incident where someone tried to blow up the church at Derry Keegan, it said. And so the church was never repaired, and St. Coleman's moved to the village in Dervock. That church becomes important as well because the ruins that were left, when they were working on them in the 1970s, they found built into the gable wall a very important stone. It's now known as the Derry Keegan stone. And it has a unique Celtic design on it. And that design dates back to between 500 BC and 500 AD. And it's probably been a stone that had a ritual importance. So it would have been built into the church possibly because of that quite traditional Irish belief in the old ways and carrying them forward. So it maybe had a superstitious importance to the people to the extent that they saw nothing unusual about building it into the wall of a church.
That memorial garden, or the memorial hall, as it was then, after the First World War, the Women's Committee up in the Carncock Church, they decided that we needed some sort of memorial to the number of people that didn't come back. They got some funds together and they said, right, they would build a war memorial hall, which was costing a powerful amount of money of £2,000. And it was a hall that seated 400. It had one side, it had a library, and on the other side was a meeting place for the Legion. It stayed there a long, long time. But, like everything else, like the mouth organ band, like the co, I went up, and just as surely as I went up, I went down.
The wee memorial garden that is there now, that's brilliant. As very sombre place to go and sit down and have a very serious think. But it used to be a building. It used to be a billiard hall. It was all of them things, but sustaining it in lean times was maybe its downfall. If you go in and you bequeath something to a group of people, if they can't possibly afford to keep it in a tent, they just disappear and fall apart.
The War Memorial itself, we had a lot to do with getting it to the state it's in at the moment. Dervock probably has got the accolade of having the first premises that the Royal British Legion in Ireland ever had. When the Legion closed down for a period because of numbers and interest and that sort of thing, they decided to raise money with different functions so that they could build what they would say a proper war memorial. And that centrepiece is what they came up with.
The brass plaques which are mounted on the new plinths of stone, they're out of the original building. They hear the names of that honourable group of men who, you know the other thing, that all give some give all. There's a lot of them give all.
The 3 bronze plaques were found in an attic of a person's house, and they were there for safety. The 3 bronze plaques cover those who died from this district area. They basically were put up by the community, and everybody on there had served in World War I or World War II.
I think it's a shock to the system if somebody young asks, "What's them boys doing?" And you say, well, maybe 2/3 of them's going to die so that you and me can still be here, in effect, free. That's why I think it's important. Keep it there, keep it seen. Let the youngins see it. Let them ask their questions. Sometimes you're bait for an answer for them, but I would rather be bait for an answer than never hear the question.
It's absolutely vital that that heritage is preserved and kept. Because I think it's vital that we didn't only remember Sunday, we remember the army or the forces. I think it's vital we remember our village as well. And we remember the old folk, the stories they told, the things they said.
As part of this tourist trail, because we're a small community and moving forward, we rely on funding from different sources. So one of the initiatives we looked at was the tourist trail, looking at those key figures, looking at those key institutions within the community to try and attract passing trade. So from a socio-economic point of view, it benefits the wider community.
I think the last thing I'd want is Dervock Main Street lined with coaches full of tourists. But I think it would be wonderful if more people discovered Dervock and came here to find out more about the history and the people and how important it is in the fabric of North Antrim.
I think it's good to keep the aesthetic, as we say. It's good that people aren't forgetting about it. I think it needs to be highlighted more that what the history and culture is in Dervock. And I think if people understood it more, we'd have a lot more tourists stopping and understanding what Dervock's actually about.
Am I proud to come from Dervock? What community can cite that they have a President of America, Olympic gold medalist, connections with China through the first ambassador, Lord McCartney? And then we've got one of the most famous rivers running through the village too. So again, there's a lot to be proud of our community and our identity.
I think it's important for everybody, no matter where they come from, to know about their local history, to know about their culture. And I think as a child too, you don't take any interest in that. It's when you get older, and it's more difficult now because the older generation are no longer here that can actually tell you all those stories. So I think it's important that when you're younger to maybe have more of an interest in what did happen and the cultures, and that also keeps the culture going. So I think that's important.
Dervock has a fascinating history, and it's only in recent years we're starting to develop that now. I would love to see people, anybody that comes through the page that comes to me, I make a point of taking them out to Dervock to show them the village and tell them its history. You live in hope. You always hope that things are going to move on, and progress, and the more things we do like this, the better it becomes.